We are in their heads, though. I like the fact that the momentum of whether it's socialism, and I would also include real, genuine, progressive democratic ideas like Elizabeth Warren's corporate board idea and antitrust and serious social action and people, occupying ICE. Like, it isn't like, look, there's no doubt that Fox News, and this is just Sam always says, which is that every time they're in power, they do cultural issues. But this is different. Like, when Bush was president, I recall when you looked at the news, it was like, okay, Republicans totally dominate. Bush and Cheney are going to bomb whoever the hell they want to. And this is even before the torture revelations, right? Like, and what we're going to look for is, Democrats who are voting basically with him on most of these things. Like, oh, I don't know, some moderate Democratic senator said that Bush isn't a good manager. And doesn't that really make him a Maoist? And, and there's some school somewhere that, had Indigenous Peoples Day. Isn't that horrible? Whereas now they actually can point to real evidence that Democrats are increasingly receptive to socialism, that great candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are winning, that a vast majority of Democrats support Medicare for all. And according to one recent poll, 51% of Republicans support Medicare for all because, they at least can recognize on some level that they're normal people who could use to not be totally destroyed and screwed by the private insurance industry. So there is actually some justification to the Fox News paranoia, which makes it all the more fun to watch. And there's no more fun paranoia to watch about human beings actually advancing and being treated well than monocle come to life Stuart Varney. Here he is, freaking out about socialism being on the march with the ever dumb. What I like about Steve Doocy is that Varney's genuinely freaked about socialism, and Steve Doocy, if he somehow ended up in Venezuela, he'd be like, all President Maduro's trying to do is just bring some new darn currency to the thing.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. So what? Maybe you eat a rat. Maybe you lose some weight. The Bolivarian Revolution goes forward. Here's Stuart Varney and Steve Doocy.
The last 6 months, we've heard so much about universal living wage and things like that. They tried the minimum wage out in Portland, Oregon, where they mandated everybody in restaurants get a certain amount, which had never been the case. And it has completely boomeranged on them.
Forgive me for using strong language, but I think this is a tragedy. We will never know how many thousands or millions of youngsters do not get their start in the workplace because they've been priced out of it. We're pricing out entry-level jobs. There's no such thing as an entry-level job any longer. If you've got a job, it has to pay for a family of four. Right. It's got to be a living wage. Well, what about those people who want to get in on the ground floor, learn a few skills? They're prepared to take a lower price per hour just to get in and get started. It's a tragedy that those people will not be getting those jobs.
It's a tragedy for propagandist, delusional fools like Stuart Varney is that this scam that you can go in at the quote-unquote ground floor and work your way to the top is a less rational thing to believe in than the tooth fairy or a literalist reading of Genesis. You want to talk about irrational ideation that causes profound harm in the world? Look no further than what you do is you just start as an associate, at the video game store, and then you just work your way up. There was actually a great segment on this on a funny show that I don't often listen to be honest, but when I do, it is very funny. They did a whole thing on this on C-Town about GameStop and some assistant manager's fantasy life that if he worked hard enough and slaved for a corporation, that his, $12 an hour job could turn into a C-level position. It's like, no, it won't. You don't have a college degree. You don't have connections in the company. That's not how this works. And America has had totally stagnated wages since the 1970s. Even in the snapshot of this recovery, we all know the stat of well over 90% of the recovery going to the top 1% of the population. It's a insane fiction, which more and more young people are saying, I'm not just priced out of entry-level jobs. I'm priced out of life. And I want universal student debt cancellation. I want Medicare for all. I want, $15 an hour is a fine start. How about $35 an hour? Okay, I don't care, because to solve every single one of these problems, there's a really simple answer to it, which is tax the hell out of the oligarchs and circulate money in the system. It's sitting there wasting and fueling dysfunction, corruption, insanity, and inequality. And Stuart Varney, his job is going to be a lot less relevant in the future, frankly, because this stuff is just going to start to come down to like an actual political conflict as more and more people wise up that his nonsense fantasy life and propaganda doesn't resemble anything to do with reality.
Yep. And if he's that concerned about all of the entry-level workers who cannot now get jobs for like $8 an hour at a coffee shop, maybe he should support a federal jobs guarantee.
Yeah, we got. That's the thing. Great thing about socialists, we have solutions for everything, Stuart.
Yeah, and just this specific policy looks like it was implemented almost 2 months ago. So there's not even any studies yet saying that, hey, this has been horrible for local businesses.
Wait, so you're telling me Portland hasn't been in a... Because as far as I understand, Portland actually still has a lot of economic activity. They still have Nike headquarters. And if anything, I would guess that if there's any problems with economic activity right now in Portland, and we have no evidence that there is, it might emanate from a bunch of white nationalist paramilitaries that are sympathetic to Trump coming into the town and starting fights with people. That might be a reason why there's some slowed activity in certain parts of Portland. Yeah. Not that people working at coffee shops can maybe begin to pay their bills.
In my search for negative effects of the new Portland bill, I did find minimum wage workers can't afford a typical one-bedroom apartment in 31 Oregon counties. So that might be a more relevant data point than a few MUI. Because that's what happens, right? Anytime there's a policy like that, you're going to get the business bureau from the local community saying, hey, this is actually tough for a few of us. And the conservatives are going to amplify that as much as possible. But the same thing happened in Seattle, and it turned out to be sort of like way overblown and actually good for everybody ultimately.
Yeah, and there's always an answer. Look, I understand with certain like genuine, actual small businesses, you can put in certain sort of guardrails and even subsidies for them. But the bottom line is like, there are always there, because it's actually the policy solutions are so simple because wealth is so concentrated. Like every single answer to where the money comes from or how it's done is always, I don't know. Apple has literally hundreds of billions of dollars in tax shell companies in Ireland. Amazon is robbing the world blind. I mean, we all know that. And the question is the political will and the power to actually do it. These are not technical questions.
Yep. And these massive amounts of profits were in fact stolen from the workers
exactly
in the first place as surplus value. So it's actually a pretty nice solution that we're not just getting rid of profits entirely.
Indeed.
And P.S., last I heard, the Portland vegan cupcake business was booming. So there you go,
I have no
folks.
doubt that the Portland vegan cupcake business is booming. Melania...